Is it okay to ask someone about their cultural or racial identity? Is asking someone about their racial or cultural background a way of showing respect and interest, or is it intrusive and potentially offensive? So here's a spoiler. Asking someone about their race or culture isn't inherently good or bad, but how you're asking the question and why make a huge difference. Here are 3 things to keep in mind. Cognitive science and psychology both tell us that our brain spends most of the day making unconscious associations and assumptions about pretty much everything, from how something's going to taste to why our colleague sent that angry email. This is especially the case when it comes to race and culture and ethnicity. We tend to automatically make a whole host of assumptions about where people come from or what their identity is based on things like their behavior or their accent or the way they look. But most of the time, those assumptions are big generalizations and can sometimes be pretty harmful. So when it comes to race and culture, it's really important that we try our best to erase as many assumptions as possible about where someone may come from. Think of someone who may have grown up in a bicultural or a biracial home who may have several identities, or someone born into one culture but adopted into another who may have cultural or racial identities very, very different than what you would assume by looking at them. We never want to assume where a person comes from or how they identify. This is why a lot of experts say you never want to approach this question with phrasing like, "You're African American, right?" Or, "You must be Vietnamese." Or, "You don't look Hispanic to me." The second thing to keep in mind is that some people are very comfortable talking about their identities and other people simply aren't. For some of us, our cultural and racial identities are super crystal clear, and we're very happy talking about it, and it forms a really important part of our identity and sense of self. For many others, our identities can be a source of conflict and stress. And so the question then becomes really personal. So you never want to assume that someone wants to talk about this or doesn't. The third thing to consider is, what's your relationship with this person? Generally, in a work context, we try and ask each other somewhat personal questions, try and get to know them better and build trust and bonding. But taking it too far too soon can be pretty invasive and somewhat unprofessional. For these reasons, most experts agree if you want to ask someone about their cultural or racial identity, wait until you have an established and trusting relationship with them. And if you're just getting to know someone and you want to find some ways to get to know them better, consider other elements that may be important parts of their identity first, like what are your hobbies, or where did you grow up, or where else have you worked? So what about if you do have an established relationship with someone and you want to ask the question respectfully? What's the best way to ask? First, consider opening up a little bit yourself first. Share something personal or something about your background. Doing this first can help make the other person more comfortable and trusting, and it also establishes much more of an exchange around the topic as opposed to a give or a take. Second, you want to be really conscious and careful of how you frame the question. Instead of, "Where are you from?" or "What are you?" consider phrases like, "Where did you grow up?" Or, "I'm curious, what's your family heritage?" One way that I've received this question that I've always appreciated is this: "Really love your last name. Does it have any particular cultural origin?" This is a fantastic way of framing the question because it gives me the opportunity to say, "I'm not really sure," and move on. Or I can go into it and say, "Yes, actually, my family is from here and I identify this way," and I can go either way. It doesn't put me in a position where I have to talk about something if I don't want to. Third, once you are in this conversation and let's say you pose the question, try and pay really close attention to their body language. Are they hesitating? Does their body language suggest they're uncomfortable? If so, stop, pull back, change the subject. But if they do share, it always helps to provide some sort of positive reinforcement like, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting," or "How great it must have been to grow up with multiple languages in your home." Overall, it's really important to keep in mind that all of us have different relationships with our identity or identities, and there's just no perfect way or formula you can know how someone is going to respond to the question. For that reason, the best thing you can do is educate yourself on different perspectives on the topic. In the accompanying resources, I provide several examples and testimonials of people sharing their experiences with this question and this topic. And that's a fantastic way to get just a little more comfortable with this question.